No way. Such a ridiculously strong genius. We can't just let him die like this. We cannot give up. Brother Wu Ding, let's think of other ways. Sage Wu Ding set up his mind. The two of them arrived at the clan leader's residence again to welcome them, but it was still Yuta Zhuang's greasy face facing them. Both sages, you still haven't given up? Sage Dong quickly replied, Steward you, on account that we have visited so many times, please let me meet with clan leader. Yuta Zhuang had started to waver, because honestly speaking, Sage Wu Ding and Sage Dong were respectful elders in the clan. They tried to meet with clan leader for several times, and with so much determination. Could it really be some urgent matter? I've told you many times that clan leader is in closed-door cultivation. If you really don't believe me, then go knock on clan leader's courtyard door, which he is in closed-door cultivation in. If you disturb clan leader's cultivation, bear the consequences yourself. His words were equivalent to giving up. Sage Dong gave a gleeful expression. That's great. Wu Ding, let's hurry in. He strode in with big steps, but after walking for a few steps, he discovered that the person behind didn't follow him at all. He turned back and asked doubtfully, Brother Wu Ding, what are you doing? Still not going to hurry and grab hold of time? It's too late. Sage Wu Ding suddenly gave out a long sigh. Sage Dong went into a blank and lifted his head to see his complexion turning green as his brows knitted tightly together with a discouraged look. What's the matter? Sage Wu Ding's voice was filled with deep regret and remorse. It's already too late. Earlier, the profound energy fluctuations in the Qilin tablet had completely stopped. Sage Dong asked in astonishment, What? How could that be possible? Have you got it wrong? Haven't that young fellow just advanced? It's just a short time since then, and he not possible, right? Sage Wu Ding shook his head. I've already tried to sense it repeatedly, so there's no way I'd get it wrong. In the Qilin tablet, there indeed has no more fluctuations, and there's only one explanation for this kind of scenario. That is, the practitioner taking on the refinement has already lost his life in the tablet. Too late. We're really too late. All gone now. Sage Dong also seemed as though he was struck by lightning as he stood dazed at the original spot. In a large family clan like Cloudy Qilin Clan, the clan's honor had long been set deeply into each family member's bones and blood. Recalling that the peerless genius who was able to hold up the Cloudy Qilin clan's future for the next several 10,000s of years within a few mere days was discovered, but before they were able to celebrate this fact, he had abruptly died. Their hearts were filled with pain. Sage Wu Ding clenched his fists as he shot a penetrative glare towards Yuta Zhuang, who was standing right by the side. Yuta Zhuang, the clan's future has been ruined in your hands. In future, if Cloudy Qilin clan declines along the way, then you'll be the greatest sinner of the entire clan. I will find a chance to report this to clan leader. Just you wait. Saying that, he flicked his sleeves and left. Sage Dong heaved a long sigh as he followed closely. Yuta Zhuang looked at their departing backs, and a puzzled look was left on his face, mixed in with fury. What is this? Merely just two old has-beens and still dare to threaten me? Do you really think clan leader will listen to you? Ha ha, simply daydreaming. At the present moment, all the disciples were gathered in front of Celestial Light's sect's main door. The disciples gazed at the people on the stage and started whispering into one another's ears as they started to discuss secretly. What's going on? Why did Sect Master suddenly gather all the disciples, and in such a formal manner? Could something big be happening? You can also listen on. What other big matter could it be? Someone raised his head and used his chin to point towards the direction of the stage. Can't you see? Someone's delightful look? Ever since young Sect Master went missing in Cloudy Qilin Mystic region, he's been swaggering about. Hush, stop talking already. The senior brother hurriedly nudged him as he looked left and right before lowering his voice. What guts you have? Don't you want to live anymore? You dare to gossip about senior brotherly like that. What I say is the truth, isn't it? Haven't you taken a look at him? Standing right beside Sect Master's side at the gathering. Those who don't know would think that he's Celestial Light Sect's young Sect Master. Senior brother gave him a stare and said, What do you mean by think? Senior brother, Li, is going to become the young Sect Master immediately. WH, what? Junior brother's tongue was tied. How could this be? Not possible, right? Why is it not possible? I'm telling you, today's gathering is exactly to announce Senior Brother Lee to become Celestial Light Sect's new young sect master. Moreover, they are going to announce Senior Brother Lee and eldest young Miss wedding. Junior brother's eyes turned wide with his entire face filled with shock. No, right? Senior brother, you must have got it wrong. Young sect master, he's just been missing for a month over, and Senior Brother Lee is going to replace him. His innate talent, potential, character, which one of these are able to match up to young sect master? What rights does he have? Shut your mouth. With these words of yours, do you really not want your life anymore? You know Senior Brother Lee's methods, and if his subordinates were to hear this, even our master will be implicated by a little fellow like you. Junior brother was berated badly and could only hush up. But after a while, the more he thought, the more unresigned he got as he inched closer to Senior Brother again and said softly, this matter, how would Sect Master he ever agree to it? In the past, when young Sect Master was around, Sect Master obviously liked him. Senior Brother sighed and knew that if he didn't make things clear, this junior brother of his who madly worshipped Lee Moying would absolutely not give up. Well, he could only put it out in the open. Sect Master indeed liked young Sect Master the most, but he's after all no longer around. Moreover, if he was missing in some other places, there was still a possibility to save him, but now young Sect Master has died in the cloudy Chelan Mystic region. For the next thousands of years, the cloudy Chelan Mystic region cannot be reactivated, and even if young Sect Master manages to escape death, there is absolutely no possibility of him leaving that place. Sect Master's body isn't in good shape, and many years ago, he no longer wanted to bother about the affairs of the sect. Under such circumstances, Celestial Light Sect definitely needs a new young Sect Master. Senior Brother Lee's potential is unreservedly #1 in the entire sect, so he naturally is the #1 choice. Moreover, I heard that he had already won eldest young Mrs. Hart, and the both of them are going to get engaged. Sect Master would naturally pass on the position of young Sect Master to his own future son-in-law. What? Junior brother had once again got shocked. But doesn't eldest young miss like young Sect Master? She had obviously chased after him for so many years. Now he just died for how many days? And she had a change of heart? How could she be like this? Enough, stop asking. Is eldest young Miss Matters something that an immature brat like you can comment about? Senior brother gave his junior brother a fierce stare, and junior brother could only shut his mouth aggrievedly. However, among the crowd, there were plenty others who were commenting about Li Lingchuan and Murong Fei as well. You can also listen on. Many of them could not believe that such a thing was happening, and they were both shocked and sad. I heard others say that Senior Brother Lee and young Sect Master's death is related, and he was possibly the one who caused young Sect Master to die. This matter hasn't been investigated properly, so on what basis can he become the young Sect Master? Just because his innate talent is the highest? Actually, he's not any higher than other people. Isn't that so? Junior Brother Luo's innate talent is much higher than his, but he's merely younger than him, hence his cultivation wasn't as high as his. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. This cannot be possible. Sect Master definitely won't be cheated by Li Lingchuan like that. And eldest young miss absolutely wouldn't possibly have a change of heart to like this kind of hypocrite who hides a dagger in his smiles. In the depths of their hearts, the disciples were determined to stand on Li Moying's side. After all, Li Moying's abnormal innate talent and potential were something which everyone knew, and the entire sect disciples were clear of what that universally shocking, peerless genius meant, and were hoping that he could lead Celestial Light Sect to a better future. Furthermore, Li Moying relied on his own ability to gain victory for Celestial Light Sect numerous times, pulling strongly against a crazy tide to crush his opponent, thus allowing Celestial Light Sect to gain the current status today. It could be said that Li Moying's young Sect Master's position was not dependent on anyone passing it on to him, but it truly was fame following merit for him. Celestial Light Sect's disciples all worshipped him like an idol. Li Moying suddenly died in the mystic region, and many of them had still not come around it, feeling that all these were unreal. To the fact that even though some people knew that Cloudy Chelan mystic region could not be activated, but they were still secretly hoping that Li Moying would suddenly return. But now, Sect Master actually was going to designate a new young Sect Master. Moreover, it was that sinister villain Li Lingchuan. Celestial Light Sect's disciples all expressed that they could not accept this, but no one dared to voice it out. Because not only was Li Lingchuan's ability above them, his character was also sly and sinister, as he would certainly take revenge against those who went against him. In the past, when Li Moying was around, he didn't dare to go overboard, but now that the only person who could suppress him wasn't around anymore, the disciples could only entrust their hopes onto Murongda, hoping that he wouldn't be brainwashed by Li Lingchuan. However, the development later totally left them disappointed. In the early morning at 7 o'clock sharp, Celestial Light Sect's huge bell rang, and the sound was sonorous and mighty, reverberating towards the mountain below, announcing for Celestial Light Sect's gathering to officially start. Everyone quietened down as they looked towards the stage. With Murong Fei support, Murong faltered as he walked up the stage. Just a short duration of a month had barely passed, and his black hair, which was originally in good condition, had almost turned totally white, and the wrinkles on his face had deepened as he looked thin and pallid, as though he had aged a number of years in an instant. One could tell that Li Moying's death had really dealt him with a heavy blow. He walked to the front of the stage and looked at the disciples below as he took a deep breath, remaining silent for a moment before he opened his mouth. Celestial Light Sect's elders, protectors, and disciples, this is something that you all might have already known some time ago. Our sect's young Sect Master Li Moying had unfortunately met with his demise over 1 month ago in the Cloudy Chelan mystic region. Murong choked for a moment and stopped. Towards Li Moying, there was affection for him. After all, he had brought him back since young and raised him up by himself, throwing in a large amount of meticulous care to nurture him. You can also listen on. As compared to Li Lingchuan, who joined Celestial Light Sect when he was 10 over years old, Murong didn't naturally like Li Moying more. But no matter how much he liked him, Li Moying was after all already dead. A dead person could not be revived. So no matter how much heartache and regretful he felt, he still had to pass the days. Celestial Light Sect was riddled with various problems within and outside the sect, and it indeed required a young sect master who could aid him to deal with the sect's matters. Li Lingchuan had proven his ability within this period of time to prove that he had the ability to deal with such matters. Of course, most importantly was Murong Fei had repeatedly cajoled Murong with Li Lingchuan's capability and even raised the intention to marry him. Murong simply could not understand why his eldest daughter would have a change of heart in such a short period of time. But she could walk out the shadow of Li Moying's passing away to find someone who mutually loved one another. Murong who loved his daughter with his heart, felt that it was a good thing, hence he tried ways to satisfy her. So combining various elements, Murong still made the painful decision. Additionally, this sect master still has 2 other important matters to announce. Firstly, this sect master's second disciple Li Lingchuan had been aiding me in dealing with the sect's matters ever since Li Moying passed on. He had exhibited outstanding performance, and further, his innate talent and ability is something which many of us had witnessed. Hence, from today onwards, he will become Celestial Light Sect's new young sect master, and his status in the sect is just beneath mine. Secondly, my daughter Murong Fei and young sect master Li Lingchuan are in love with each other, and this sect master is deeply gratified by it, so we shall be holding the engagement ceremony in the near future. By then, young sect master's assumption and engagement ceremony will be held on the same day. Murong's words on the stage were passed down into the disciples' ears. Every single one of them bore an expression of disbelief as they were shocked emotionally. It's real. Those hearsay are really real. How could this be? Li Lingchuan actually really became the young sect master. Not only that, eldest young miss is really going to be engaged with him. Why did this happen? The only young sect master in my heart is forever senior brother Li only. However, no matter how shocked, displeased, upset the crowd were, it was of no use. Li Lingchuan stood behind Muronda on his right as his lips curled upwards. Anyone could tell that his expression was filled with determination. His gaze surveyed the ground around the mountain as he observed everyone's expression as he memorized all those people who were obviously discussing about him. Humph. Ignorant brats. Still missing Lemoyne? Too bad. He's already dead. No matter how incredible or how genius he was, he's only a dead person. How can a dead person even fight with me? Could he even possibly hold on to the position of young sect master and not let go? Li Lingchuan's heart was extremely complacent right now. He had cooperated with Lung Yifeng this time round, and although he had experienced quite a lot of danger, but eventually, based on his own luck, he became the one who gained the most out of this situation. Not only had he managed to get rid of Lemoyne, he had even replaced him to become Celestial Light Sect's young sect master. Furthermore, he had successfully taken the advantage of the situation and obtained Murong Fei's heart when she was at her most vulnerable point. Of course, what he was most complacent about was his sudden intentions to kill the nearing death Lung Yifeng. Lung Yifeng's realm ring had simply too many and too valuable treasures. It was no wonder he was a descendant of a large family from the soaring heavens continent. All these now all belonged to him, Li Lingchuan. What's more, he need not bore any responsibility because the dead man Lemoyne had already been made into a scapegoat. You can also listen on. Li Lingchuan felt that he was simply too intelligent. Not only had he not felt ashamed of his own actions, instead he self-assumed that he had grabbed the right opportunity to obtain today's result. All these were because of his shockingly great guts and luck. Lemoyne, hadn't you always been arrogant and unexcelled in the past? But what use is that? The last person to obtain everything is still me, isn't it? Your position, your authority, your woman, don't they all belong to me in the end? So to speak, whoever laughed the last would have the best laugh of all. He was feeling complacent while he was thinking, and at the same time, he waved to a protector next to him. Those few under the tree shade had been presumptuously commenting about the sex matters, so capture all of them. Don't think that these people were still thinking about Lemoyne, but not too far later on, Lemoyne would become a part of everyone's memories and not be able to cause any waves. Murong Fei stood behind Muronda on his left as the expression on her face looked melancholic, but very quickly, she revealed a smile. No matter how great Lemoyne was, he was already dead and could no longer bring her any glory. Originally, she wanted to get married to Lemoyne because of his outstanding innate talent. He would definitely become a peerless top exponent in future, and marrying him would allow her to become the target of every woman's envy. But he's dead, and everything is turned into passing clouds. So it wasn't wrong for her to look for a new man. Violet Sun Valley. Inside the Qilin tablet, under the brutal attacks from spiritual beast Qilin, Lemoyne's profound energy was nearly exhausted. He held on miserably for a period of time, but this was a battle which could not possibly be won, so no matter how long he dragged it out, there would be no change to the result. His consciousness started to become blurry. Finally, after yet another time of being sent flying off by the spiritual beast Qilin, he fell onto the ground and laid there motionless. Qilin's attack stopped for a moment. Little fellow from Cloudy Qilin clan, get up. However, Lemoyne did not give any response. On that perfectly sculpted, good-looking face, there was no hint of color as his eyes were shut tightly with a sliver of blood on the side of his lips. Spiritual beast Qilin suddenly felt that something was amiss as he cried out again. Quickly get up. Stop playing dead. Don't think that you can get over this by playing dead. It still did not get any response. Qilin threw Lemoyne up into the sky and observed his condition carefully. Lemoyne's breathing and pulse had stopped completely, and although there was slight profound energy fluctuation coming from his body, but it was so weak that it could be ignored. This was the display of the total depletion of profound energy. Under such circumstances, a practitioner could be said to be in a critical stage. The only possibility of survival was to get treatment immediately. Not only did one need to take several 6th level and above pills, he also needed a same attribute practitioner on a higher grade than is to inject profound energy into his body to help him fully unblock all the broken meridians, to make up for the loss of profound energy. All these needed to be completed within 2 hours, otherwise the practitioner whose profound energy was depleted completely would really become a dead person completely, totally unable to be revived. However, to Li Moying, this method of treatment was equivalent to no cure at all. According to the refinement rules in the Qilin tablet, spiritual beast Qilin would not possibly save him. His current condition was equivalent to being sentenced to death, with no possibility of revival. When Qilin saw this, it couldn't help but sigh. Such an exceptional genius, and he actually met with his demise like that. You can also listen on. Not knowing if his luck was simply too great or just too bad. Under such scarce heaven and earth profound chi in soaring heaven's continent, to be able to have God-grade innate talent and to successfully activate the Qilin tablet. It originally was his fantastic luck, but unfortunately, Qilin tablet's energy wasn't enough, and it led to him being unable to leave. Sigh. If it was several 100,000 years ago, such a peerless genius entering the Qilin tablet would absolutely not have such a result. You can only blame yourself for being born several 100,000 years later. Spiritual beast Qilin gave a long sigh and paced back to its original spot as it prowled down again. Since Li Moying was undoubtedly dead, it had no more reason to continue attacking him, so it could slightly save some energy. After all, Qilin tablet's activation this time round had exhausted a large half of the heaven and earth profound chi, which had been accumulated in Violet Sun Valley. Violet Sun Valley would probably not make its appearance for the next couple thousands of years. Following spiritual beast Qilin's hibernation, the entire Qilin tablet regained its usual pitch-dark environment. All the raging thunder attributed energy had once again resumed back to silence. After some time, Qilin tablet's tablet body moved slightly as it began to slowly descend, sinking down into the ground. The refinement had ended and the Qilin tablet would return back to its original state. The mechanism started slowly, giving off a slight abrasion sound. Spiritual beast Qilin's eyes were tightly shut as it totally didn't detect that in the pitch-dark corner without any light, the body which it had assumed was totally dead twitched slightly. Outside the Qilin tablet, Huang Yueli hugged little Qilin and squatted at the original spot without moving an inch as her eyes were tightly fixated onto the position of the stone tablet, totally not daring to even blink. Since the moment when little Qilin had fainted, the stone tablet kept showing various kinds of images. Stone tablet's color kept on changing, sometimes giving off a blue color and sometimes an abstruse violet color. In the sky, lightning kept on descending downwards. Bolts after bolt of dazzling lightning bring along explosive thunder, attributed energy, lighting up the dark sky into bright daylight. This scenario really was too abnormal, and Huang Yueli was feeling extremely worried, but there was nothing that she could do. She had been checking on little Qilin's condition, because as long as this little thing revived, it meant that Li Moying had successfully got past the crisis. However, no matter how she looked left or right, up or down, little Qilin still didn't budge as it sprawled in her arms. Furthermore, that little thing's body was turned stiffer and slowly turning colder. Huang Yueli was flustered as she simply didn't know what she should do. As this was an ordinary encounter, she could still think of ways to save him, but Li Moying was now in the refinement. So even if she wanted to go save him, she might possibly be more of a hindrance than a help. Moreover speaking, this was Cloudy Qilin clan's refinement grounds. As a sacred Phoenix race's practitioner, her ability was naturally suppressed and had no way to decode the mechanisms and arrays. Just as Huang Yueli's brows were tightly knitted while in deep thoughts, the stone tablet's purple light suddenly faded. The sky no longer had thunder and lightning and had turned exceptionally silent. Everything seemed to have gone back to the original state before Li Moying had gone in. That block of tall stone tablets stood upright in the original position, and the Qilin totem which had been activated by Li Moying's blood, no longer shone. It looked no different from an ordinary piece of stone tablet. What's going on now? Has the refinement ended? You can also listen on. Huang Yueli frowned as she sized up the stone tablet while looking at it from top to bottom. This really looked a little too abnormal. Earlier, it was still dark and gloomy as lighting and thunder kept on booming, and now it suddenly turned peaceful, as though that raging electric current energy had totally not existed before. Generally speaking, to have such a matter happening only meant that the refinement had already ended. No matter if Li Moying had successfully passed through the stage or failed in the middle. Anyway, it should have ended. But not knowing why, Huang Yueli started feeling extremely uneasy, as though some accident would happen. She couldn't help but hugged little Qilin tighter, only to discover that it had laid straight in her arms, as though it had died. "Hey, little thing, wake up. Damn, what's going on? Li Moying, come out quickly." Passing the refinement, raising your ability, although these are important, but it's not as important as your life. Can you stop making others get so worried for you? Huang Yueli bit her lips as she waited for Li Moying's appearance. Since the refinement had ended, then no matter what the result was, he definitely needed to come out. By then, she ought to educate her own fiancé properly, to let him know that he was now a man with a family and could not play around with his life any longer. However, she waited for a long time, and yet Li Moying didn't appear. The stone tablet stood erect at its original position, high, mighty, and motionless. Huang Yueli initially didn't think much of it, but as time went by, her brows knitted tighter and tighter. Why hasn't he come out yet? Could it be that he encountered the same thing as me previously, thrown to soak into some Qilin blood after the refinement? But it had been an entire day and night, so he should have been done, right? Another 3 days and 3 nights passed by. Today evening, at the stone tablet's position, a burst of clank, clank, clank sound was heard. Huang Yueli, who sat in meditation nearby, heard the sound and immediately opened her eyes. Just one look, and it made her have an abrupt change of color. The stone tablet in front of her actually descended into the ground slowly, and from the looks of it, it seemed to be retracting downwards into the ground. How could such a thing have happened? Li Moying wasn't out yet. Why did the stone tablet suddenly disappear? Huang Yueli let go of little Qilin and shot right up to the stone tablet. How could this happen? Stop, quickly stop. She was shrilling at the top of her voice as she stretched out her hand to attempt to touch the stone tablet. These days, she had been feeling extremely bored and had carefully observed the stone tablet structure. Based on her armament refining innate talent, she was still able to understand a little on the mechanism in the stone tablet. But even so, there was no way she could enter the stone tablet, because this kind of god-leveled mechanism, which used blood to operate it, the prerequisite to control, it was to have the bloodline of the Cloudy Qilin clan. But now, she couldn't be bothered any longer as she retrieved several long swords from her realm ring and left it stuck in the chinks in the ground where the stone tablet was, in an attempt to stop the stone tablet from sinking downwards. These long swords were refined out of extremely solid muddy sky rock. Even if it was a 9th stage realm practitioner, he would find it hard to break. Any single one sword was priceless. It was enough to buy off more than half of the entire Celestial Light sect. But even so, a solid, hard, profound weapon like that was still unable to obstruct the stone tablet from sinking downwards. It couldn't even slow down the descending speed at all. The sound clack, clack, clack kept on resounding. The long sword's breaking sound was heard, and the priceless profound armament, which was worth 100,000s of high-grade spirit stones, had all turned to scrap within instants. You can also listen on. But Huang Yueli couldn't be bothered about these profound armaments, as she was now terrified to the extreme. Even when she had met a life and death crisis, she hadn't been that anxious. Li Moying, what the hell are you playing at? Why haven't you come out yet? Stone tablet continued to descend, and not too long later, it had already descended by half of its height. Huang Yueli tried to think of various ways, but was still unable to stop it completely. Damn it, why can't it be stopped? She furiously lost her rationality as her fist smashed onto the stone tablet. The next moment, the Sacred Phoenix Race's practitioner suffered a backlash as she was sent flying out, crashing heavily onto the ground and fainted. Because of that, she failed to notice that in the dark night, a full moon slowly rose from the ground level. Yet another full moon night had descended upon them. Huang Yueli lost consciousness for more than 4 hours before she regained her consciousness as her head was still throbbing in pain. She used her hand to hold up her head and her brows creased. Really enough, what huge feud does Cloudy Qilin clan and Sacred Phoenix race have against each other? Isn't it just a stone tablet? I can't even touch it at all. Thinking of the place where the stone tablet stood erect earlier, it was now totally empty as there was nothing to be seen at all. The ground was extremely flat, totally unable to tell that there was once an intricate mechanism which had once stood there. Huang Yueli climbed up from the ground with her steely green face. Since things had come to such a pass, she knew that there was no use to be anxious. Li Moying had absolutely met with an accident or trouble which he had no way to solve, hence he did not show himself. She must first find out what had happened before she could come out with ways to help him. Anyway, she absolutely would not believe that a man like Li Moying would die here so easily. Right, absolutely impossible. Li Moying is definitely still alive. He couldn't possibly be dead. Impossible. Huang Yueli clenched her fists and tried her best to convince herself. Even though she was feeling sure in her heart that all these were possibly her own deception to herself, but if she didn't hypnotize herself like that, she knew that she would definitely be devastated. She refused to believe any possibility of Li Moying had encountered a mishap. After Huang Yueli hypnotized herself, she started to revolve around the core region to observe carefully, trying to find out the origins of operating the stone tablet mechanism. All the mechanisms have a way to decode it. I cannot do it means my standard isn't enough yet, and there must be something which I had failed to notice, she kept on thinking as she surveyed the area to search for clues. But as she searched, she suddenly felt that something wasn't quite right. The surroundings turned quieter and quieter, so silent that she could hear her own breathing. Huang Yueli's heart started to palpitate faster and faster. Although Cloudy Qilin Mystic Region was originally very quiet, but it had never been so quiet to such a state, as though the surrounding air was going to be completely frozen. Not right. Something was extremely not right. Huang Yueli turned her head around to see that at the original stone tablet's position where it stood erect, there were 3 huge, sinister-looking magical beasts prowling around that area. Their bodies gave off a powerful aura which made one's hair stand. This was the aura which 9th-level magical beasts would reveal. Huang Yueli's mind suddenly flashed past the words which Li Moying said to her. He had defeated the 3 9th-level magical beasts before the stone tablet appeared. You can also listen on. Apparently, the appearance of these 3 magical beasts was because the mechanism of the core region had been reset to the original state. Actually, this point was totally expected, but as she was agitated by Li Moying's disappearance earlier, that she had lost the usual cool and rationality that she usually had, hence, she failed to notice that such a thing had happened. But now, the appearance of the 3 magical beasts right here meant that she was in deep trouble. If Huang Yueli's ability was strong enough, then actually this was a very good opportunity. She only had to think of a way to defeat these 3 magical beasts, and she would be able to make that stone tablet appear at the same position once again. Only this was with her current ability. It wasn't possible for her to charge and to save him, but on the contrary, she would be sending herself to doom instead. Huang Yueli's thoughts flew swiftly past her mind as she quickly made a decision. A wise woman knew better than to fight when the odds were against her. She nudged backwards silently, preparing to leave this dangerous place and preserve her life first. But she had just moved when those 3 magical beasts turned around to face her. 3 pairs of vicious-looking gazes all fell onto her at the same time, and under the ray from the moonlight, it looked exceptionally sinister. Huang Yueli gave a dry laugh. Don't be mistaken. I'm not here to take part in the test. You need not pay too much attention to me. I'll leave this instance. However, those three magical beast gazes were fixated on her rightly, and furthermore the muscles on their bodies turned taut as they put on a posture which looked as though they were ready to attack at any point of time. Huang Yuli scooped up little Qilin by her side. I say this. I have a spiritual beast Qilin for protection. We are all from the same family, so you need not muster large forces. She had been long-winded, still hoping for a slight glimmer of hope for little Qilin to emit out a little bit of spiritual beast aura, so as to stun these few magical beasts. But apparently, all these were in vain. How would the king among ninth-leveled magical beasts possibly be scared off by a spiritual beast, which was still in its infancy stage? Not waiting for her to finish her words, the three magical beasts all simultaneously gave off an earth-shattering howl as they ferociously charged towards her. Huang Yuli immediately stuffed little Qilin into her sleeve as she turned around and ran with all her might. While she was running, she threw out various kinds of profound armaments in bid to obstruct the magical beast from pursuing her footsteps. However, her ability against the ninth-level magical beast was just too huge, and even though she had already utilized her agility dance steps, raising her speed to the highest, but the distance between her and the magical beasts kept on decreasing. One of the magical beasts waved its claw, and a bright striking thunderbolt descended from the sky as it struck towards her. Huang Yuli hurriedly turned as she evaded just in time, with the thunderbolt just grazing past her. She caught sight of the ground with her peripheral view as it was filled with multiple meters deep cracks, and her heart couldn't help but be frightened. Luckily, her reaction was swift enough, otherwise wouldn't she have been split into two halves directly? But her current state wasn't any better. She had managed to avoid one thunderbolt, but it didn't represent that she was able to evade every single bolt, so it was best for her to leave their attack range as soon as possible. Huang Yuli ran quickly as she observed the surrounding situation. The three magical beasts behind her had entered into a range where they would attack her, hence they kept on making their moves towards her. Bolts after bolts of lightning repeating continuously as it rained down on her head, almost sealing off all the places which she could hide. Huang Yuli moved left and right as she gave everything she got to evade the attacks. You can also listen on. Huang Yuli was feeling extremely fortunate right now that she had obtained the inheritance of agility dance steps in Sacred Phoenix Race's Refinement Tower, and after continuous days of hard training, she managed to derive at a small realm. This god-grade, move profound skill wasn't proficient in speed, but in evading attacks. With the agility dance steps, she successfully evaded most of the electric attacks, but a small portion of the lightning still grazed past her body. These external injuries weren't too serious, and mainly those were mere abrasions. What was most embarrassing was that her hair had curled up in different directions from the lightning currents at near distance. She just needed to use her imagination to know what kind of bombastic hair condition she had right now. She gauged that she looked no different from a porcupine. Luckily, Moying isn't around, otherwise it would affect my little public elected perfect image. Huang Yuli mumbled while finding joy in her sorrow, but before she was done, a bolt of lightning struck her right back area. She forcibly increased her chi and flew for a distance before she narrowly escaped it. But her speed had now been raised to her limit, and using this speed to advance was actually very taxing on her profound energy, which was also shocking. She could clearly feel that the profound energy in her body speedily dropped drastically, and not too long later, she was about to exhaust all the profound energy within her. If those magical beasts chased up to her, then she would really be finished. In terms of going up directly against them, she couldn't even defeat one ninth-level magical beast, not to mention 3 of them. Just at this life-threatening crisis, Huang Yuli's gaze shone, and she barely managed to sneak a peek from the corner of her eye at the right front mountain wall, which was filled with messy, disoriented notches. To ordinary people, this seemed like sword scars which were left behind unintentionally by a practitioner when they battled. But this made Huang Yuli's eyes shine. Whoever the senior who had left this array behind, he's simply a lifesaver. She hurriedly shot upwards to the mountain, and her right hand gesticulated an incantation as her 10 fingers deftly turned into remnant images, totally unable to see the movements of her hands. Her lips were pursed tightly as she put on a solemn expression. The speed of her hands was extremely swift as her 10 fingers danced and had already become remnant images, totally unable to see the movements of her hands. At the same time, droplets of sweat slowly slid down from the side of her forehead onto her chin. Even though she had already recognized the defensive array, which this certain senior had left behind in the refinement grounds, but after several thousands of years, whether this array could be used or not was hard to say. Perhaps all the hard work which she had put in now was merely a waste of effort. Furthermore, as she suddenly stopped, the 3 magical beasts behind her chased up with incredible speed as the distance between them narrowed even further. If she was unable to activate the array in time, she would definitely be struck by lightning within a few breaths and be turned into a charred corpse. The more critical the situation, the clearer her thoughts became. This was the difference between top-rated geniuses and ordinary practitioners. Under such circumstances, the real genius would be able to display their utmost potential. The speed of Huang Yueli's hands had already reached the limit, and even broke through the limit. Finally, when the 3 magical beasts were barely just 10 meters away from her, the array patterns on the mountain wall suddenly lighted up. Huang Yueli immediately took out a big handful of magical beast cores and spiritual stones from the Sky Phoenix ring as she threw it towards the mountain wall. Her throw was very precise, although she had thrown out so many at one go, but each piece of magical core precisely lodged into the recess of the array. The entire array's patterns lighted up, and an invisible barrier enveloped her within, nicely blocking out a burst of lightning which was directed at the top of her head. You can also listen on. The array activated just in time, and Huang Yueli just managed to scrap past the crisis. She heaved a long sigh as she laid limp on the ground, looking at the outer electric currents sparkling as she felt super fortunate over this. At least her luck wasn't that bad. If not for this array, which could just nicely be activated, it probably would be difficult for her to escape from this round's death. 3 magical beasts discovered that their prey had actually escaped, and all of them were raging with anger as they kept on howling outside the array and using up all their strength to make their moves. Bolts after bolts of electric currents crashed onto the array as though it didn't require any profound energy. For a moment in time, Huang Yueli was worried that this ancient array would suddenly become ineffective. But she rejoiced at the result because, under such intense attacks, the array patterns kept on releasing dazzling rays, reflecting all the electric currents back. The senior who created this array must be an array grandmaster to be able to deflect 3 powerful magical beast attacks. Not many people are able to set this up, eh? Huang Yueli looked left and right. If it wasn't for the fact that the current situation wasn't suitable, she really wanted to do a thorough research on this array. To be able to deflect 9th-level magical beasts, this might probably be a god-grade array. But now is not the time for her to be distracted. Very soon, Huang Yueli realized that although this array was able to block out the magical beasts outside, but the depletion of the magical beast cores was simply too fast. The handful of magical beast cores which she threw out earlier were all 7th or 8th level magical beast cores, and those were from Li Moying, who hunted for those magical beasts in Violet Sun Valley. This kind of single attributed pure energy and high-grade magical beast cores were very durable in maintaining ordinary arrays. But in this array, it was merely less than 1 hour, and its energy was nearly depleted completely. Huang Yueli had no choice but to change a new batch of magical beast cores. But this wasn't a good long-term plan because she originally didn't have many high-level magical beast cores with her. As she was trapped in the array, she had no way to replenish it as well. In this way, it won't take long before the array would collapse because of insufficient energy. The only plan now was to pray that these 3 magical beasts would lose their patience soon and return to their original position. However, not knowing what was going on, Even heavens went against her. Huang Yueli waited and changed several magical beast cores, but those magical beasts continued to stubbornly prowl and wait outside the array. Huang Yueli put her hand into Sky Phoenix Ring's storage space to discover that she didn't have much 7th-grade magical beast cores left as her expression turned extremely grave. These magical beasts are really too much. Haven't they seen any beauty before? Don't they know that they look very ugly? Why must they keep following me? Although she spat out these words of ridicule, Huang Yueli actually had an understanding in her heart. This was probably related to the sacred phoenix race. The valley's magical beasts seemed to be attracted towards fire-attributed energy naturally. Previously, when Little Phoenix exhibited its profound energy, it suffered a large group of magical beast attacks. Earlier, when she was running for her life, as she had no choice, she had to exhibit her profound skill. In this way, it turned her into a plate of tender, fatty meat, luring those magical beasts' appetites as they pursued after her relentlessly. Huang Yueli's brows creased tightly as she tried her best to think of corresponding ways to deal with this matter. But this was destined to be solutionless. The array's energy was about to exhaust, whereas she had no place to escape to. She only heard a loud boom, and the array patterns suddenly lit up. You can also listen on. Following that, it collapsed completely. Huang Yueli had already made preparations in advance. Right before those magical beasts had reacted in time, she had already gained the initiative by striking first as she threw out all the thunder flame balls she had with her. At the same time, she turned around and escaped for her life at the first instance. Although it was possible that she might meet with her demise this time around, but she still had to put up some final struggles. She would not possibly admit defeat until the very last moment. Alas, no matter how swift her reaction was, there was no way she could escape from the encirclement of those 3 9th-level magical beasts. This time around, there weren't any more surprises, and she no longer discovered any new arrays, so she was quickly chased up by those 3 magical beasts. 9th-leveled magical beasts' intelligence were very high, and they seemed to know that she was a difficult character to deal with. Hence, they decisively split up into 3 directions, encircling her in the middle. Huang Yueli looked to her left and right as the corners of her lips couldn't help but twitched. This time round, where was she supposed to run off to? She indeed had her wings clipped. Before she could even think of any idea, the 3 magical beasts had simultaneously raised up their claws. 3 peerlessly frigid lightning tore the sky apart with astonishing might as it struck down towards the top of her head. No one would be spared from this kind of lightning attack. Huang Yueli was faced with a desperate predicament, but instead she calmed down as her lips couldn't help but curled into an arc. Actually, she had a faint premonition that Li Moying had not appeared till now meant that he definitely met with danger, and there was a 99% chance that he had already died during the refinement. She tried so hard earlier because she didn't believe in it, all just to hypnotize herself. There was actually plenty of evidence to verify how the truth was. But now, she finally could not deceive herself any further. Anyway, she was about to die right away. This way was rather good as well. The both of them could share a mutual death, buried together in this mystic region where it was cut off from the rest of the world. Wasn't it a fortunate thing? Anyway, since Li Moying was already dead, she didn't want to stay alive on her own. What was the meaning of living alone? Moreover, am I considered to be buried into the grave of Cloudy Qilin Clan? If those seniors from Cloudy Qilin Clan and God Realm knew about it, would they explode from anger? Not knowing why, this sudden thought popped out from her head. At this moment, lightning had already descended onto the top of her head. Moonlight was like frost. Just as Huang Yueli was busy escaping from the 3 magical beasts, a full moon slowly rose up from the level ground, gradually up into the sky. This day's moonlight was especially cold but bright, showering down its splendor and even dispersing quite an amount of fog which shrouded Violet Sun Valley all year long. Moonlight shone on the location where the stone tablet was, and the sand on the ground suddenly started to swirl up even though there was no wind, as though some invisible strength was driving it. In the ground where the Qilin tablet was deeply buried, it was filled with complete darkness and complete silence. The body, which had not moved at all in the corner, suddenly twitched. Spiritual beast Qilin seemed to sense something as it raised its head and looked towards the corner. However, the surrounding was still dead silent. Qilin felt that it probably had been hallucinating. How could a dead person possibly come back to life? It must have been thinking too much. After verifying that, it buried its head back onto its front legs. This time round, it sunk into deep sleep with a peace of mind. Not knowing how long later, the person in the corner started to twitch again. Immediately following that, it twitched one more time. Again and again. You can also listen on. If there was light in the Qilin tablet, then spiritual beast Qilin would definitely be able to see it clearly that the manly Moying whom it had already assumed was dead had his entire face turned red as his forehead creased tightly, bearing a painful expression. The sweat on his forehead kept on dripping, and very soon, the ground had a wet patch. At the present moment, his entire body felt as though it was soaked in hot oil, where every single part of him felt excruciating pain. Not only that, he even sensed that his body, which had originally exhausted all his profound energy, had suddenly been filled up, and moreover, it rose dramatically in an instant, as though it was about to split open all his meridians. Following the passing of time, the sweat on Li Moying's body sprouted even more, and his clothes were entirely drenched in sweat. His consciousness was sometimes clear and sometimes blurry as a large amount of images flashed around in his mind, scene after scene, from his past life to the present life, all mixed together. While in a trance, he seemed to have gone back to 15 years ago. On a biting cold evening in the most northern part of soaring heaven's continent, he stood in the snow as he worked tirelessly to hurry to where Huang Yueli was located. As he was in the middle of advancement, he forcibly stopped it and came out his closed-door cultivation, hence, Mu Chengying suffered a serious backlash. His cultivation dropped back all the way from 9th stage realm peak to 9th stage realm mid-level, and every single meridian in his body suffered varying degrees of damage. For this kind of situation, if he didn't stop to meditate and recuperate, then it was possible that he might not be able to return back to his original peak condition, not to mention breakthrough in the future. To a practitioner, that meant that his future was ruined. However, Mu Chengying couldn't care less as he forcibly suppressed the urge to throw up blood, clenching his teeth tightly, and still increased his speed to the limit. He only had one thought in his mind, and that was to go save Huang Yueli, regardless of any cost. Lear, I'll be there immediately. Hang on and wait for me. But he was still one step too late. By the time he reached the place where Huang Yueli was trapped, he only caught sight of the scene, where Huang Yueli detonated her own dantian as flames filled the entire scene. Turning up the temperature as raging fire, attributed energy instantly consumed the entire ice fields. There were several 9th stage realm practitioners around Huang Yueli, and they had turned into charred bodies instantly. Even the layers of ice, which never melted for a long time in the northern ice fields, had a huge melted patch. Lear, Mu Chengying's eyes opened wide as he risked his life and rushed over. But he could no longer reverse anything. Huang Yueli burst into a fire image right in front of his eyes. Right after it killed all the enemies which had surrounded her, the flames seemed to revolve around Mu Chengying longingly once before dissipating slowly into the sky. Mu Chengying stretched out his hand, but didn't manage to grab hold of anything. He fell onto the ground in extreme pain for a very, very long time. A month later, Blue Profound Sect. Mu Chengying, you trash. Liu Bian barged in a Blue Profound Sect flustered and exasperatedly as he directly pushed the guards who were blocking him as he entered Mu Chengying's residence directly. The minute he saw him, he didn't give an explanation and immediately punched Mu Chengying on his face as he broke out swearing at him. Aren't you very incredible? Aren't you labeled as the #1 top expert in soaring heaven's continent and you're invincible? Since you're so incredible, Why can't you even protect your beloved woman? Why did you let Huang Yueli die in front of you? You're really a piece of trash. If I had known that you were so useless, why did I even give her up to you? You can also listen on. Lu Bian choked with emotions, but finally still swallowed the last few words back. Since things had come to such a pass, this feeling of his would never be made known to anyone forever. Lu Bian howled wildly as he grabbed Mu Chengying's collar, shaking him violently. But very quickly, he realized that something was wrong. Although the two of them were both in the ninth stage realm, but the disparity between their potentials was actually very huge. If it was usual, how would Mu Chengying possibly allow him to offend him in such a way and not fly into a rage? When Lu Bian thought of this, he turned his head and had a shock. Mu Chengying's face was ashen green, and his eyes were lifeless with a disheartened look, as though nothing could possibly affect him. Even though his collar was being clutched by Lu Bian, he seemed as though he had not noticed anything, only immersing him in his own world. Lu Bian saw his condition and was so shocked that his hand shook as he loosened his grip. What happened to you? Mu Chengying seemed as though he just realized that Lu Bian had just arrived as he lifted his eyes to look at him and gave a miserable smile. What's wrong with me? What you say is correct. I'm certainly a piece of trash. I had once vowed to heaven that I will use my life to protect her, to let her be the same as when I first met her without any worries, but I actually let her die in front of me. Mu Cheng buried his face into his hands as his heavily suppressed, pained voice rang dully. Just a little longer, just a little longer. Why didn't she wait for me? Why can't I be a little faster? If I had got out of my closed-door cultivation earlier, perhaps she wouldn't have died. Lu Bian looked at his grieved look as though he wished he was dead, as his heart was stunned and developed a little bit of sympathy towards him. Towards Huang Yueli's demise, Mu Chengying's pain was definitely not any lesser than his. However, this thought just flashed by, and he quickly reacted over. Why should he sympathize with Mu Chengying? A man who couldn't even protect his own woman. Other than trash, what else could he be? He sneered. Right? Who asked you to be late by that one step? Who asked you to only have cultivation in your mind, and not her? Mu Chengying immediately refuted his words. No, it's not like that. Lier to me had always been the most important. Who are you trying to bluff? These words of yours might be effective towards other people, but towards me? Don't I understand you well enough? Lu Bian's gaze, which was fixated on him, seemed as though it was about to sprout fire. In your heart, of course, cultivation is much more important. No matter how important Yueli was, she still could not be compared to your cultivation, isn't it? You're still trying to lie to me. Let me ask you your closed-door cultivation this time around. Is it to break through to 10th stage realm? If it wasn't because something happened to Yueli midway, have you already broken through to 10th stage realm? Don't tell me you are not aware that after the 10th stage realm, you will ascend to God realm. You will leave soaring heaven's continent, isn't it? Mu Chengying was stumped with this question as his face flushed red, totally unable to say a word. Lu Bian looked at his expression, and his heart felt both infuriated and pained. Have you thought about what would happen to Yueli after you leave soaring heaven's continent? You have plenty of enemies in soaring heaven's continent, and you're leaving her alone here? Let me tell you, her death is caused by you. Even if nothing happened to her 1 month ago, after you leave, you will eventually meet with the same end. This totally isn't coincidental. No, it's not like that. Mu Chengying frowned. I know that all this is my fault, but I really hadn't thought about leaving Lier here alone. I have prepared. You can also listen on. Prepare? Prepare what? Lu Bian totally refused to listen to him, finishing his words as he snorted disdainfully. After Yueli obtained the Sky Phoenix ring, it was because of you standing behind her, which was why no one dared to covet it. Ever since the news of you going into closed-door cultivation to prepare for breakthrough 10th stage realm broke out, numerous people laid their eyes on her. Don't tell me you totally didn't sense anything at all, but you still went into closed-door cultivation, isn't it? If you really cared about her, would you allow her to go to Northern Ice Fields on her own? You should stay by her side at all times. If If one really had placed her in your heart, that person would be willing to follow her to the ends of the earth. It's until now that I finally understand why she refused to agree to marry you. Because your feelings always have a prerequisite, and that is under the circumstances that your cultivation is not affected in any way, then you will place her into your consideration. You are that kind of selfish **STRD. Liu Bian completely blasted out everything he had hid inside his heart for so many years, as he blurted everything out at once. He had once forced himself to give up, suppressing the feelings he had inside. That was because he felt that his own potential wasn't powerful enough, and he was unable to protect this stunning and talented lady like Huang Yueli. He originally thought Mu Chengying could. Mu Chengying's innate talent and resoluteness deigned him to become soaring heaven's continent's #1. Further, he appeared to love Huang Yueli so deeply. Liu Bian had once thought that Mu Chengying was much more suitable for Huang Yueli. In order not to spoil the friendship between Mu Chengying and himself, and to let the woman in his heart to have a better life, he stepped down reluctantly. But now, he finally realized that he was wrong. Perhaps he would never be able to chase up to Mu Chengying in terms of cultivation, but at least he would always place Huang Yueli in first place, willing to accompany her to anywhere in the world. Even if he would not be able to protect her eventually, he would never let her die in front of his eyes. Mu Chengying sat despondently on the ground as the deep pain swallowed him completely. The throbbing pain in his heart made him unable to breathe. It's not like that. I'm not what you think. Lear, she really is more important than anything else. He mumbled to himself, but also knew that he had no way to explain himself. It wasn't that he didn't place her in first place, but for the longest time, he had always assumed that as long as he was stronger, only then would he be able to protect her properly. Only when he was so strong that no one could match up to him, then would no one dare to offend his beloved woman. Since the day he stepped into Sky Emperor City, it was love at first sight for him when he caught a glimpse of the graceful young priestess of the mythical Flame Palace. All his hard work was so that he was worthy of her. Later on, it was to allow her to do whatever she wanted with a peace of mind, to behave unscrupulously. Everything he did was because of her. Before deciding to advance, he already had a plan, which was to ascend together with Huang Yueli. He was only afraid that Huang Yueli might not be willing to do so, hence he thought of acting first and reporting later. Whoever knew that this little intelligence of his made other people who were coveting his position mistook that he no longer placed Huang Yueli in his heart, hence deciding to make a move to kill her. All these, ultimately, were all because of him. So when Liu Bian said he was the one who caused Huang Yueli's death, he indeed had no way to refute it. Furthermore, no matter what he said now was of no use. Mu Chengying, this is my last time coming to look for you. From now onwards, we will go our separate ways. I, Liu Bian, don't have a friend like you. You can also listen on. Liu Bian's heart grieved severely as he could no longer face Mu Chengying. Just from seeing him, he couldn't wait to strangle this former pal to death. Liu Bian left the words of severing their relationship and turned around to leave. Mu Chengying sat in the room alone for a long time. He actually had not sensed when Liu Bian actually left. Even when his 4 guardians came over to persuade him, he totally had no response. In his heart, there was only one thought, which was if he had another chance, he would stay by his Lear's side every single moment, not letting her to go take any risks alone. If there was another chance. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something as he violently shook his head and stood up immediately. The 4 guardians standing guard at the door heard a noise and stood up one by one to check things out. Sectmaster, are you better? Do you want, however? Mu Chengying seemed as though he had not heard anything as he directly walked past them, heading straight towards Blue Profound Sect's scripture depository. This place was the largest depository where all the scriptures are kept, as it had the most amount of ancient records. Mu Chengying stayed in there for an entire 7 days and 7 nights without sleeping. I definitely remember. I obviously remember seeing it before around here. He tried his best to search through all the books as his heart was in a flurry. Anyone who saw him would definitely feel that he had already gone nuts. When Mu Chungying finally reappeared, even his guardians had a great shock. Sect Master. Mu Chungying's look was no different from a dead person, only with his eyes gleaming with a raging glow. Everyone, do as I tell you to. 2 months later, Liu Bian charged in a blue profound sect once again, and this time he was even more exasperated than before. He simply could not believe such a thing. Mu Chungying, had he gone nuts? He could even do this sort of thing? However, even before he reached the top, he was already blocked in the middle of the path by Mu Chungying's guardians. Master Liu, please halt. Sect Master is now in closed-door cultivation and has instructed this subordinate to not allow anyone to head up to interrupt him. Especially Liu Bian. The guardian spoke without any expression. Liu Bian did not hesitate as he struck out a move toward his chest. Make way. Don't tell me you don't know what your sect master is trying to do. Mu Chungying has gone crazy. Are you guys going crazy as well? How can he believe this sort of thing? Do you know what kind of price he has to pay? Get lost. Saying that, he shouted towards the mountain door. Mu Chungying, come out right now. Guardian's ability was far from Liu Bian's, and after taking a palm strike from him, he immediately threw up a mouthful of blood. But he still abided by his duties as he blocked the middle of the road, not retreating a single step at all. Master Liu, please don't make things difficult for me. Sect Master, he has already instructed. Instruct my *SE. The usually graceful man of the troubled times finally couldn't help but spew vulgarities. Don't tell me that you can open your eyes wide to see him do such things. That is much more painful than death. No way. Move aside. Don't force me to kill someone. But what? You don't want to save him? If you do, then scram to one side. The guardian's hand clenched into a fist as he struggled for a very long time before finally nudging a step to one side. His life was saved by Mu Chungying, and this was the first time in his life to defy Mu Chungying's command. You can also listen on. But he could not do that, because he really didn't want to see Sect Master Mu, whom everyone worshipped, falling to that kind of ending. Moreover now, Miss Wang was no longer around, so if there was anyone who could persuade him, it would be Liu Bian. Liu Bian took quick steps and rushed into Mu Chungying's mountain valley, which he went into closed-door cultivation in. At this present moment, it was already midnight, and the sky was filled with stars with the moon especially bright, illuminating every corner of the entire valley. When Liu Bian charged into the valley, he saw Mu Chungying sitting cross-legged on an empty space under the moonlight. From the looks of it, he seemed to be cultivating. Liu Bian saw this and was extremely surprised. He thought that he would see. What are you doing? Mu Chungying suddenly opened his eyes as a cold smile hung by the corners of his lips. Master Liu, what a rare visitor. If I don't remember wrongly, you seem to have said this yourself, that you will never step into Blue Profound Sect anymore, and you no longer wanted to see me. Such a short span of time, and you're already regretting it? When Liu Bian heard that, he recovered from his shock. You stop acting. I've already heard that you're getting your man to collect that thing, and you've already collected everything. I know what you're trying to do. Mu Chungying smiled faintly. What do I want to do? What do you know? I'm collecting that thing because Lear loved it before, and I'm using it to remember her. Why? Can't I do that? What does it have to do with you? He made it sound so easy that for an instant, Liu Bian almost assumed that he had really made a misjudgment, that Mu Chungying really didn't have that intention. But very soon, Liu Bian saw the evident greenish-black color under his eyes, which was caused by the repeated depletion of profound energy. Do you think I'm an idiot? That ancient record was discovered by the both of us that year. I know what you're thinking of doing. You're really nuts. That is merely a subjective idea left behind by the predecessors, and even the senior who wrote that ancient record had never done such a thing. That would definitely not succeed. How do you know it's not possible? Mu Chungying's idea was exposed by him, so he totally couldn't be bothered to continue acting. As long as there's a hint of hope, I will give a shot. Liu Bian shook his head in disbelief. Do you know what you're saying? Life and death are ruled by fate. The dead cannot be revived. Moreover, Yueli's soul had been scattered. It's not an ordinary death. My pain isn't any lesser than yours, but we must learn to accept the truth. Some things, since it has already happened, there would be no way to reverse it forever. Truth? What truth? How am I supposed to accept it? I totally cannot accept it. Mu Qingying suddenly shouted out as he broke down, rebutting Liu Bian's words. All the pretense of being calm and steady suddenly turned into naught. Liu Bian gritted his teeth as he glowered at him angrily. Cannot accept it? Now, then you say you cannot accept it. What were you doing before that? Do you think that by doing this, it would lessen your guilt? Did you think that by doing this, Yueli would feel happy in her grave? You can't regain anything at all. All you want is to reduce your own guilt. Mu Qingying's thoughts seemed as though the nail had hit on the head as he started to shake violently. But after a while, he forced himself to calm down. Up to you on whatever you want to say. No one can stop me on the things I want to do. Haven't we already severed our friendship? Why do you still not scrammed away? You can also listen on. Liu Bian was so infuriated that his face turned green. Right, I'm acting low, coming to stop you even after our friendship has been severed. But I came not because of you. I just don't want Yueli to see a trash like you tangling onto her even when she's down there. If you're in a hurry to go die, no one will stop you. Mu Qingying's gaze swept towards him as his voice was incomparably cold. Liu Bian, do you know why you can't win me? This sentence was cold and calm, but it seemed like lightning striking onto Liu Bian. He thought he had concealed it very well, but he didn't expect that this little thought of his had been completely seen through by Mu Qingying. Just as Liu Bian was so shocked until he couldn't move, Mu Qingying's words continued to ring in his ears. This is because you're a rational man, whereas I am a lunatic. You'll keep thinking that because you don't have enough power, so you will only start wooing her after you have made a name for yourself. You will give her up to me because you cannot protect her. You will also not do anything meaningless just because she's dead, only silently mourning for her. But I am different. I only know that I want her. I want her to be mine, whether she's up in the skies or deep down in the earth. I will follow her in life and death. She can forget about casting me aside. Perhaps you're right. All I am doing might be useless, but even if I can't do anything, at least I could try to follow her and having my soul scattered, to have a feel of what kind of feeling it is. Mu Qingying was saying that, and he actually smiled. However, that extraordinary good-looking face now seemed especially sinister. Accompanied with that smile, it made one feel terrified. Mu Qingying, you've really gone nuts. I am nuts. From the first day I met her, I have already gone nuts. Mu Qingying rose up his head suddenly and laughed wildly. Let me be a complete lunatic this time. I've already said whatever I should, so you can leave now. After his words, he waved his sleeve ferociously, and an incomparably powerful, profound energy came sweeping towards Liu Bian. Liu Bian's power originally wasn't very strong, and as he was caught off guard, he totally had no form of resistance as he was directly sent flying out. He flew for a dozen or more feet before he fell on the ground. But he wasn't hurt in any way as he turned around and rushed into the valley once again. However, this time around, the valley was enveloped by a huge array. Many colored array patterns kept on lighting up from the exterior of the array, blocking his view. Thus, he was unable to see the situation inside at all. Liu Bian wanted to charge in, but the minute he got near, he was expelled by the array. Mu Qingying, Mu Qingying. He called out anxiously, but there was no response at all. A burst of 7 colored flowing lights charged up into the sky. Li Moying's head became more and more painful as numerous memories instantly surged into his brain. These memories were too complex, as though it was going to split his head apart. It caused him to be dizzy as his brain hurt so much as though it was about to explode. At the same time, his body sensed the brilliance of the full moon, and the profound energy in his body grew more and more abundant, as though it was going to flow out from his body. His entire body was in unbearable pain, and he finally couldn't help but gave a moan. HNG. Not only that, while he was unconscious, initially he turned around and struggled repeatedly, as though he wasn't able to bear the pain from the inside of his body. Lemoyne's groan became louder and louder. Spiritual beast Qilin, which laid on the center position of the stone tablet, sensed something as it slowly opened its eyes. You can also listen on. At the beginning, Qilin was still a little dazed, apparently not understanding why the Qilin tablet had already returned back underground, and it would still suddenly be awoken. But immediately following that, the intermittent moans from the corner made it suddenly awoken. Qilin's pair of bronze bell eyes opened as it swept towards the corner, and only one look, and it was completely shocked. Although it was absolute darkness, but spiritual beast's vision far surpassed humans, hence, it could clearly see the figure was kept on twitching on the ground. What's going on? Hadn't this little fellow already died completely? How did he suddenly start to move again? Qilin raised its front paw and rubbed its eyes, thinking that it had developed a hallucination. However, the truth was placed right in front of it. The dead corpse in the corner actually rose from the dead. This isn't possible, eh? Earlier, I obviously witnessed it with my own eyes that his profound energy was totally exhausted, and under this kind of situation, he would breathe his last within 2 hours. How is it possible that he actually came back to life? Something's wrong. This is not right. Qilin muttered to itself as it stood up from the ground and walked towards the corner. The minute it got nearer, it could see even clearly. Lemoyne kept rolling around as he cramped up, apparently suffering a huge amount of pain. Qilin had even sensed that there was an extremely powerful energy in his body, which would explode out at any point of time. Lemoyne's condition was extremely bad, but no matter how bad it was, he was still alive. Moreover, from the way that his eyelids trembled, it seemed as though it wouldn't take long for him to open his eyes to regain consciousness. What should I do? He actually came back to live in such a manner. This time round, Qilin was really dazed. It had never committed such a serious mistake to cut off the refinement while the person in the Qilin tablet was still alive, and even bringing that live person underground. This was a complete violation to the Qilin tablet's operating procedure. Moreover, since Lemoyne wasn't dead, this refinement shouldn't have ended. Could it be that he should go up ahead to deal with Lemoyne a fatal blow before he regained consciousness completely? To tell the truth, spiritual beast Qilin could not bear to do so. It was experienced and knowledgeable, so how would it not know that a peerless expert like Lemoyne was extremely rare in the entire God realm, enough to become Cloudy Qilin clan's future leader? Earlier, even after experiencing that fatal refinement, he was lucky enough to have survived. That meant that he had soaring luck and was genuinely unmatched in his generation. If it had to kill him, it would defy heaven's will, and perhaps it might even affect the entire Cloudy Qilin clan's luck. While spiritual beast Qilin was hesitating, it suddenly sensed roars of thunder coming from the sky as a powerful suppression surfaced on its heart. It immediately realized that this was the beginning of the operating procedure of the Qilin tablet. If any live person entered the Qilin tablet, then it must attack that person until that person gave up, or if any one of them were killed. This was the natural regulation which spiritual beast Qilin, which had been sealed as the spirit artifact, could not defy. Under the drive of this kind of oppression, the color of Qilin's eyes turned darker and darker as the rationality in its mind started to turn weaker, and its beast nature was completely unleashed. Rawr! Spiritual beast Qilin raised its neck upwards and gave a raging howl, totally unable to control itself as it pounced towards Lemoyne's body. You can also listen on. Spiritual beast Qilin's body moved, and it brought along the hibernated thunder attributed energy within the Qilin tablet. The entire stone tablet space was charged with the electric current power as it gave off a serene, yet terrifying blue-purplish glow. This glow reflected onto Lemoyne's face, making his terribly pale complexion look no different from a dead man. Electric currents speedily gathered into spiritual beast Qilin's body, and not too long later, it made Qilin's aura rise to the maximum. Following that spiritual beast Qilin's claw waved outwards, and a raging lightning kept on flickering under its claw, as though one would be torn into two halves if one was touched by it. However, just at the instance when Qilin touched Li Moying, the originally unconscious man suddenly opened his eyes. Qilin was now helpless, but upon seeing Li Moying opening his eyes, it suddenly had a regretful thought in its mind. No matter what, such an excellent practitioner dying here was really a huge pity. But at this moment, it suddenly realized that something was wrong with Li Moying. His gaze was exceptionally cold and emotionless, so penetrative as though it could shoot through one's soul. From just one look, Qilin sensed a chill running down its spine. At the same time, Li Moying's agitated, profound energy instantly exploded. Boom! Heaven-shattering explosion rang, and the entire Qilin tablet started to shake uncontrollably as the limestones from the wall kept on falling off. A blinding lightning suddenly lit up, with an aura which pressed forward, the might of the thunder attribute energy coercing one's heart to tremble, as it came blasting towards spiritual beast Qilin's direction. This lightning contained energy which was incomparably pure. Even a matured spiritual beast like Qilin was in awe till it couldn't move a limb. Qilin was only able to see that burst of silver thread like lightning flash past, and immediately following that, it sensed extreme pain which ran through its entire body. I'm going to die? Its mind only had this thought, and following that, it completely lost its consciousness. In the Qilin tablet, Li Moying had already unknowingly stood up. If Huang Yueli was around, she would be able to tell that even though his phase was sharp and horrifying, but he had no spirit. Evidently, his soul detachment illness had acted up once again. Li Moying's conscience was blurry, and the large amount of images in his brain made him blurt out his past and present lives. He wasn't sure where he was, only knowing that he must kill all those who stood in his way, clearing all obstacles. He must return to his beloved woman's side. Anyone who dared to obstruct him would only have a death ending. Li Moying clenched the amethyst light sword tightly, and with a wave of his sword, the surging profound energy within his body was unleashed along with the sword blade. That sword ray directly shattered the Qilin's spiritual body. Just one move, and the original spiritual beast, which left him soaked in blood earlier, was eliminated with just one move. However, the sword ray's energy had not diminished. That dazzling ray had not even weakened as it directly crashed onto the top part of the Qilin tablet. Qilin tablet had suffered this kind of attack and started to shake violently, as though it would be shattered from the profound energy unleashed from him. Li Moying raised up his amethyst light sword emotionlessly as he prepared to make a move. But right at this moment, small blue-purplish light balls started to gather from the Qilin's spiritual body, which had been shattered by him, as it directly injected into his meridians. You can also listen on. Li Moying's movements paused as he clearly sensed those thunder-attributed profound energy entering his body, instantly raising the profound energy in his body to another new height. The current him was originally in 9th stage realm peak condition. After spiritual beast Qilin's profound energy entered his body, the profound energy within his body grew so abundant as though it was about to expand and split him up. Especially the profound energy in his dantian, it kept on charging against his body's limit as though the very next moment he would advance once again. Li Moying uncontrollably raised up the long sword in his hand as he struck again. His current condition was incomparably near to 10th stage realm, and the might of this sword was so powerful that it was totally unimaginable. For an instant, thunder-attributed energy exploded. Sword glint directly split through the top part of the Qilin tablet, shooting into the sky. This time, even the ground started to shake violently like an earthquake. The ground in the core region shattered completely as bursts after bursts of ground-splitting cracks appeared and the energy's aftermath scattered out towards its surroundings. By the time the vibration stopped, the top part of the Qilin tablet had already been penetrated through by Li Moying's sword qi, revealing a huge, large broken hold. The full moon's beam penetrated the broken hold and shot into the inside of the stone tablet, landing onto Li Moying's body. Under the irradiation of the moonlight, the turbulent, profound energy in his body finally started to subside a little. However, his peerlessly handsome face was still shrouded with a dark and gloomy expression as his gaze was so deep that it was unfathomable. His perfectly sculpted peripheral view was like a cold sculpture under the moonlight. Following that, Li Moying leapt upwards and jumped out from the hole in the top part of the stone tablet. Huang Yueli summoned up all the existing profound energy in her body as she faced the lightning which was coming at her. Even though she knew that it was definitely impossible for her to survive under such a strong intensity attack, but she could only brace herself to resist for the last time. The minute the appalling and mighty lightning rained down on the top of her head, the ground suddenly shook. Huang Yueli's feet were unstable as she wasn't able to stand still from the shaking as she fell onto the ground. On a mountain, a large rock dropped down and luckily and coincidentally blocked the top part of her body. 3 bolts of lightning simultaneously fell onto the huge rock, turning the vast-sized, rock-solid white mist rock turning into powder instantaneously. Huang Yueli sprawled onto the ground as the powder fell all over her body. She looked as though she had just been dug out from the mud, and, as compared to much earlier, she was in a much sorrier state by 10 times or more. However, Huang Yueli felt extremely fortunate because she was really too lucky to have survived in such a situation. Alas, her joy only lasted for a short span of one breath, because her good luck did not allow her to really escape danger. The 3 magical beasts paused for a moment and immediately stretched out their claws as they struck an attack posture. But it seemed as though Heavens was intentionally on her side. Just as the 3 magical beasts were prepared to make a move again, the ground started shaking again, and furthermore this time round, the sky spun and earth went round while the ground shook and mountains swayed. The ground shook violently and cracks appeared below their feet. Large rocks kept on falling down and fell all over the heads of Huang Yueli and the 3 magical beasts. Huang Yueli hurriedly extended her footwork to evade. The 3 magical beasts also hurried to evade the falling rocks, and they weren't concerned about continuing to attack her for the moment. Huang Yueli's heart leapt with joy as she moved towards the direction far away from the magical beasts. But due to the falling rocks, she could not move too quickly. You can also listen on. The ground vibrated vigorously for a quarter of an hour or so before it slowly stopped. Right now, Huang Yueli had barely moved a distance of 500 meters and was still in the attack boundary of those 3 magical beasts. Sensing that the ground was no longer shaky, Huang Yueli went into a blank. Damn it, why is it not shaking anymore? Isn't there an earthquake? Quickly continue to shake. She clenched her teeth as she screamed in exasperation. But this time the ground really stopped shaking. Huang Yueli was so anxious that she nearly threw up blood and lifted up her head. She saw those 3 magical beasts had already calmed down as they cast their gazes onto her once more. Furthermore, this time round, their gazes turned even more malicious and even more savage. Apparently, this kind of prey, which they could swallow in one mouth, had escaped a number of times right when she was in their claws, and had thoroughly spiked that beast nature. Huang Yueli was screaming inside her heart that things were far from good as she immediately turned and ran. Alas, it was too late. When she heard the bursts of electric currents breaking in the air, she knew that she would definitely not be able to escape death this time around. Huang Yueli shut her eyes as she waited for the lightning to strike her to death. However, the expected pain did not descend on her. Not only that, she even heard peals of miserable shrieks coming from behind her, and following that was the sound of a heavyweight item crashing onto the ground. Huang Yueli's footsteps took a halt, and before she was able to turn her head around, she suddenly felt a powerful aura in the air, even stronger than those three magical beasts' aura, much more overbearing by 100 times. But this terrifying, profound energy aura gave her an extremely familiar feeling, so familiar that she almost shed tears on the scene. Huang Yueli turned her head around in a daze, and she saw a tall and lanky figure standing behind her not too far away. That man stood in the darkness, and his eyes were covered by the shadow. But from the contours of his lower jaw, she could tell that he was an extremely good-looking man. When Huang Yueli saw him, her tears started rolling down. Moing, Moing, you're not dead. You're really not dead. She leapt upwards as she flew towards Li Moing and pounced into his arms, tipping her toes up as she hugged his neck. Boo-hoo-hoo, you really scare me to death. I thought you were a goner for sure. What exactly happened? Why haven't you appeared for such a long time? Do you know that I'd be worried? You baddie, big baddie. Huang Yueli rubbed her face against his chest as she rubbed all her tears and mucus onto him as well. She had not cried for a very long time because she had always believed in her own strength, not believing that tears could change anything, hence she didn't allow herself to be so soft. But at this moment, she completely couldn't control her own emotions, as that strong and unyielding lady disappeared from her body. What was left in her shell was an ordinary young lady, one who was worried and scared over her fiancé's disappearance, who had turned into a frail, ordinary young lady. Noticing this point made Huang Yueli feel even more vengeful. She cried for a long time in Li Moying's arms and slowly started to calm down. She stretched out her hand and whisked Li Moying's top to wipe her tears, and at the same time punched him with her little fists with fury. It's all your fault, causing me to be so embarrassing. All your fault for scaring me. She mumbled and suddenly sensed that something was not right, because Li Moying had been really too quiet. If it was usual times, seeing how sadly she cried, this man would have felt extreme heartache. You can also listen on. He would probably have been hugging her nervously, comforting her, so how could he possibly be that silent? Huang Yueli's heart jolted as she hurriedly raised her head up. The next moment, her eyes met with a night-like dark pair of pupils, and that pair of eyes even had occasional flashes of bluish-purple currents. Under the moonlight, he seemed extremely terrifying, whereas this man's profound energies fluctuations were so powerful beyond anyone's imagination. Electric currents kept on flickering around the duo, giving off a buzzing, exploding sound, as though it would explode at any point of time. Huang Yueli's body instantly went stiff as she subconsciously raised her head to look at the sky. When she saw that bright full moon, she immediately understood what had happened. Your soul detachment illness acted up again? She asked carefully. However, apparently, Li Moying would not answer her. That pair of cold and stern eyes was fixated on her, without a single word or a single movement. Even though his surrounding profound energy was on the verge of explosion, but Huang Yueli, who hugged him tightly, was still unharmed. Even after such a long time of crying while hugging him, not one part of her was electrocuted at all. Huang Yueli realized this, and her lips couldn't help but curled into a smile. Sigh, really, every time you need me to save the hero in distress. Saying that, she tipped her toes up as she raised her head to block Li Moying's lips. Li Moying's subconscious was originally rather blurry. He walked all the way here to kill the magical beasts and save Huang Yueli because of the murderous intent of his soul detachment illness. These three magical beasts were the nearest living creatures, hence it attracted him over. When Huang Yueli pounced towards him, for one moment, he almost struck out directly, but not knowing why, the electric currents in his hand had already gathered into a light circle, but he wasn't able to lift his arm up no matter what, and could only watch helplessly at this dirty young lass pouncing into his arm while crying and rubbing him. As his past and present lives memories are mixed up in his mind, Li Moying's head was so painful that it was about to split open, so he couldn't remember who this young lass was, until Huang Yueli kissed his lips. That familiar sensation, familiar presence as it instantly emitted into his body, making his raging profound energy comforted gently by an invisible big arm. His consciousness slowly cleared up. This presence. Yes, that's right. This was that presence which he had crossed over his past and present life, seeking again and again in spite of all the setbacks, forever going crazy over. The presence of his beloved woman. His Lear. Lemoyne's surrounding aura slowly restrained itself as the profound energy in his body slowly went back to original. He locked onto Huang Yuli's slender waist and turned from guest to host as he brought her into his arms and wildly, but passionately started to kiss her. He seemed to place all the experiences such as terror, worry, self-blame, regret in his confused memories, melding everything into this scorching, passionate kiss. Lemoyne's kiss became stronger and stronger, wilder and wilder, as though he was going to swallow her into his stomach. Huang Yuli felt Lemoyne kissing her back. Initially, she was rather happy over it, because it meant that Lemoyne's soul detachment illness was under control and he was about to regain back to his normal self. But after a while, she felt that something was amiss. Lemoyne's kiss was too devoted as he locked onto her tightly, and the intensity of his strength almost broke her waist. You can also listen on. Huang Yuli subconsciously started to struggle, trying to push this man aside. But Lemoyne's strength was just too strong, and the arm around her waist was like metal. No matter how hard she pushed, she was unable to struggle free. Not only that, as she continued to struggle, Lemoyne became even more impatient, and his actions started to become even more intensive. He suddenly raised his head up and left Huang Yuli's lips. Huang Yuli hurriedly took the opportunity to take in deep breaths, feeling that she was about to suffocate. However, right before she had finished panting, Lemoyne pinched her lower jaw, forcing her to raise up her head and started to kiss her once again. This time round, Lemoyne simply locked her lower jaw, leaving her unable to move totally, hence, she could only obediently take in his close-to-venting wild kiss. Originally, Huang Yuli still struggled a little, but subsequently, she was conquered by that raging sensation as she subconsciously threw herself into his arms befuddled. By the time Lemoyne finally released her, Huang Yuli's lips had already turned swollen, and her skin was broken as the corners of her lips had some blood stains left behind. Huang Yuli blinked her eyes in a daze, realizing that she had regained her freedom. She jumped right up and used both hands to cover her swollen lips as she berated him in exasperation. Lemoyne, you lunatic! Which artery had been connected wrong? Do you need to act like this? You are really too much. Whoever knew that after Lemoyne harped that, not only did he not repented, he even started laughing as his eyes shot past a sliver of reminiscence. Bingo, what you said is right. I am a lunatic, past and present live, only crazy for you. Really, he was extremely grateful to heavens for allowing him to complete something which no one had successfully done before, allowing this young lady to be reborn right in front of him. Huang Yuli was extremely upset because this man was just too sickening, and he didn't know how to repent. She raised up her large watery eyes as she gave him a furious stare. You don't think that you've escaped death, then you can act like this. You must apologize. Lemoyne didn't make a sound. Huang Yuli became angrier as she couldn't help but gave him a push. Why aren't you saying a word? Whoever knew that her hand had just brushed onto Lemoyne's body, and that man just followed according to her strength and fell backwards. Huang Yuli had a huge fright because she totally hadn't used much strength. Not to mention what kind of peerless, strong practitioner Lemoyne was. Even an ordinary child who didn't cultivate would not fall in such a manner. She went into a blank and finally reacted and stretched out her arm to catch him. Lemoyne fell in her arms, and the energy from his body seemed to have been sapped dry. He totally had no strength, and the color in his face drained away cleanly within a couple of breaths. Lemoyne, wake up, what the matter? Huang Yuli shook him, but could only hear him coughing slightly as a sliver of blood dripped down from the corner of his lips. Huang Yueli didn't dare to move casually as she laid him flat on the ground. She retrieved various kinds of medication from her space and shoved it in handfuls into his mouth. At the same time, she tore open his shirt as she started to clean and bandage his wounds. Upon seeing Li Moying's body filled with various injuries, there were even a few which were obviously fatal injuries, Huang Yueli's heart started to tug him tightly. Luckily you came back alive. I knew that you wouldn't leave me alone. You can also listen on. Li Moying was originally seriously injured in the Qilin tablet, and later on, when his soul detachment illness acted up, it hurt his state of mind, hence he was unconscious for a longer time this time around. This wasn't the first time Huang Yueli experienced this, hence she wasn't as nervous as previous times. After ascertaining that his pulse, breathing, and profound energy fluctuations were normal, she rested her heart and moved him into the small little cave which they had once stayed for a little while to recuperate. Luckily, after Li Moying appeared, little Qilin also revived immediately as it leapt and frisked about, unleashing its might to awe those 6th and 7th leveled magical beasts around the boundary of the valley. Hence, during the period of time when Li Moying was recuperating, they hadn't met with any danger as everything went along smoothly. 7 days later, very late into the night, Huang Yueli was sleeping soundly. Although they were only temporarily residing here to recuperate, she had always emphasized heavily on the quality of living, so she redecorated the cave, placing thick bedding on the ground, and also set up an array in the cave, which became a warm and comfortable place to live in. Little Qilin laid in her little den by her feet, but to show the disdain towards the sacred phoenix's little chick, it used its little bottom to face it. She was in a daze when she seemed to have heard a strange sound. Huang Yueli opened her eyes and looked towards Li Moying's direction and immediately sobered up, then climbed up. Li Moying, who was lying not too far away, suddenly kept flipping around and even gave deep groans with an extremely uncomfortable look. Huang Yueli walked over as she bent down and looked at him worriedly. Moying, what's the matter? Which part of you feels uncomfortable? Li Moying's eyes opened up into a slit as his lips opened up slightly. Huang Yueli saw him regaining consciousness and gave out a joyful look as she leaned in close to him. She only heard Li Moying's weak breathing as he said, You hide further away a little. I think I am about to advance. Huang Yueli's eyes widened. What did you say? Before Li Moying opened his mouth again, an earth-shattering thunderous sound was heard from the sky. Following this bolt of deafening thunder, the entire cave kept on shaking as bolts after bolts of lightning descended from the sky, penetrating the mountain walls as it flowed into Li Moying's body. Strong thunder attributed profound qi filled the entire cave as sounds of pitter-pattering electric currents were heard coming from the sky. Huang Yueli basically couldn't withstand this strong aura as her chest felt the turbulence of her qi and blood, hence she hastily retreated backwards. She retreated several thousand miles away before she finally felt slightly better. At least she didn't feel like throwing up blood. Originally, she wanted to bring little Qilin along, but whoever knew that when this little thing sensed electric energy, it wriggled out from her arms immediately as it flew towards the center of the lightning, casting this female mistress of it aside. Huang Yueli could only sit down alone at a hill far away, looking afar at the position of the previous cave. Precisely speaking, that location was no longer a cave. Within a short span of a quarter of an hour, that entire mountain had already been flattened to ground level by the continuously descending heavenly thunder. It even struck the falling stones from the mountain into charred gray dust. Li Moying's body was lifted to the middle of the sky by the electric current's might, and on his back was a pair of thunder wings which seemed even more distinct than when she first saw it. When he was in the 7th-stage realm, that pair of wings was not totally visible and was only in the form of an energy body, but now it was clearly seen in fine details with substantial essence, seemingly no difference from a real pair of wings. You can also listen on. Li Moying was surrounded by dazzling, brilliant purple electric currents. Bolts of lightning surrounded him to form a large zone filled with flickering thunderbolts. In this piece of thunder-attributed energy formed zone, every single inch of energy was under Li Moying's control. Anyone who wanted to get close to him would be turned into ashes with just a single thought. This thunder zone almost enveloped the entire valley as the abundant, profound qi gushed through the clouds, all the way till it enveloped the top part of Violet Sun Valley's thick fog, illuminating the entire sky as though it was daytime. When Huang Yueli saw this from far away, her little mouth formed an O shape, totally unable to close up. What on earth? He is going to advance into the 9th stage realm already? He had plainly just advanced into the 8th stage realm a few days ago. Both of us are God-grade geniuses, but why is he advancing much faster than me? What on earth happened? With her eyes, she could naturally see that the profound energy fluctuations had already reached the limit of the 9th stage realm, and the entire valley's thunder-attributed profound qi were all gathered on him, which was barely enough to supply him the energy for advancement. Not only that, his body also began to undergo changes. Under the invasion of the electricity, his skin started to break into tiny pieces as it started to grow out inch by inch. His entire body kept on sprouting blood, and that original, peerlessly handsome face looked even more sinister than a demon. Huang Yueli had once experienced the process of advancing into the 9th stage realm, so she knew clearly that failing to succeed and the changes of shedding one's mortal body to exchange one's bones were the signs of advancement. Because for those practitioners under the 8th stage realm, even though their abilities far surpassed ordinary people, they were still human. But once they advanced in a 9th stage realm, their substance had actually entered half-god realm territory. So no matter if it was in terms of profound energies flow or the strength of their meridians or body, it was a huge difference from 8th stage realm. Because of them, when one was below 8th stage realm, challenging someone beyond the big realms wasn't too difficult, but 9th stage realm practitioners, no matter how weak their combat power was, there wasn't a possibility of being defeated by 8th stage realm practitioners. The only one who could cross realms, challenge against a 9th stage realm practitioner, and win was probably only Li Moying alone. But after today, he need not do any cross realms battle again. Huang Yueli looked from far as she got rather nervous, and her hands had already clenched into fists while mumbling silently. How could there be such a huge formation? Even when Mu Chengying advanced then, the surrounding thunder zone wasn't that strong. Today there aren't any 9th stage realm and above practitioners' guardians around. Moying, you got to be careful. To a practitioner, the stronger one's innate talent was, the more powerful the strange phenomenon would be attracted to, and the stronger the ability after advancement would be. And at this present moment, Li Moying had already gathered all the thunder-attributed energy from the entire Violet Sun Valley onto him. With a raise of his arm, he would be able to cut across mountains and rip apart heaven and earth. But his body still seemed like a black hole, continuing to absorb the heaven and earth profound qi. Violet Sun Valley and Cloudy Chillin Mystic Region originally had an array to mutually isolate each other, but under the impact when he gathered the energy during advancement, the array kept on shaking violently. Huang Yueli raised her head to see bursts of light flashing continuously in the sky. Those were the array patterns which were being activated continuously from the exterior of Violet Sun Valley, obstructing Li Moying from absorbing the profound qi from outside the valley. However, this condition only maintained for a short period of time, and not long later, an intense bursting sound was heard coming from the mid-air. You can also listen on. The ancient array outside Violet Sun Valley finally could not withstand the impact from Li Moying's profound energy as it collapsed completely. The energy required to forcibly shatter an array was 10 times the energy required to maintain an array, so it was imaginable just how strong the gathered thunder-attributed energy which Li Moying had gathered was. The array collapsed and caused a huge force of impact as it blew Huang Yueli away in a moment. Huang Yueli's body drew out an arc in midair, and she was almost going to fall heavily, incurring serious injuries. She hurriedly summoned Little Phoenix, making it speedily grew larger as she sat on its body to leave the thunderous core zone. One lady and one phoenix flew all the way to the boundary of the cloudy Chilean mystic region before they finally stopped. The only advantage was that since Lemoyne had already absorbed all the thunder-attributed energy from the valley, those magical beasts which had been reared in Violet Sun Valley and had automatically attacked Little Phoenix had all turned into energy balls, merging into his thunder zone. So Little Phoenix was no longer afraid of appearing. But under several impacts from the energy, Huang Yuli had already turned ashen-faced as she sat on the grass in an extremely disheveled state. Little Phoenix also turned back into a little Shota, a look as he sat by her feet, staring at afar in a daze. Heavens! Big Demon Lord is going to ascend to God Realm? Isn't that a little too fast? You just gotten engaged, and he's going to abandon you? Little Phoenix's chin almost dropped onto the ground. Huang Yuli swept him with a glance. Stop talking rubbish. Moying is merely advancing into the 9th stage realm. It's still too early to ascend. Although she said that, Little Phoenix's words still made her feel a slight crisis. Originally, the gap between her cultivation and Lemoyne's had shrunk, but whoever knew that after Lemoyne entered the cloudy Chilean mystic region, he actually broke through 2 large realms, ditching her aside by a huge chunk again. No way. She got to work hard in order to ascend together than her fiancé. Little Phoenix was still making a big fuss. 9th stage realm. Are you kidding me? How is that possible? Thinking of cheating the young me, as though I've never seen a practitioner advancing? When I was with my brother in God Realm, I've also experienced a lot of things all right. There are so many geniuses in God Realm, but none of them had caused such a shocking phenomenon while advancing to the 9th stage realm. If it wasn't for the lockdown of the barrier from the outside of the cloudy Chilean mystic region, I think it would even poke a hole through the sky. Huang Yuli looked at him, raising his voice with that exaggerated tone, making her lips twitch. Enough, stop shouting. It's a crucial moment for Moying to advance, and if you affect him, see if I will beat your butt or not. Wang Kai covered his little, but in a conditioned reflex as he guarded against her. If you dare to cast domestic violence against this little lord, I will not allow you to mount on me in future. Huang Yuli was about to speak out when she heard an earth-shattering sound from the sky as thunder and lightning swept across the entire mystic region, almost blinding everyone's eyes. Huang Yuli immediately prowled down as she put out a defensive posture. Wah! Save me. Little Wang Kai whooshed and snuck into her arms as his little body kept on trembling, his little face turning pale. Oh my goodness. Female demon's fiancé is really too terrifying. Was he really breaking through to the 9th stage realm? But he was still in the 7th stage realm when he first entered the mystic region, and now it was scary enough that he was breaking through to the 9th stage realm. 10th stage realm, of course, wasn't possible. But the strange phenomenon was something which he had not seen before in God Realm. That's it. Big Demon Lord was so amazing, so it definitely had no way to stick out in future. You can also listen on. Right now, Lemoyne himself wasn't feeling very good. The process of failing before succeeding wasn't only on the dermatological surface, but it also penetrated deep into his bones and internal organs. Every inch of his body had been purified by electricity while purging out the impurities in his body, and that pain was indescribable with mere words. But this to him was an experience, and besides, his tolerance level had always been rather high, so the physical pain wasn't a big problem for him at all. What made him really in pain was the splitting pain from his primordial spirit, as though his brain was about to split open. Various complex memories kept on flashing past, as though it could no longer take on the strong suppression from his advancement, which might completely burst anytime, anywhere. This wasn't an illusion, but under the kind of strong intensity thunder-attributed energy, it was possible that his soul might be scattered at any point of time. Lemoyne was very clear on how this situation came about. It was the price which he had to pay for his heaven-defying action in his past life. In reality, he himself wasn't as optimistic as Huang Yuli, because only he himself knew that his advancement this time round, he might not be able to succeed. Every single time he advanced, the risks he had to take on were much higher than ordinary practitioners. Although it looked as though his cultivation speed was swift, but the higher his cultivation, the more risks he had to undertake. So much that the danger level when his soul detachment illness acted up was in line with his cultivation. Liu Bian had once told him that the best way of curbing his soul detachment illness was to never advance forever. But for a genius practitioner like Li Moying, how could he possibly accept himself to be a weakling forever? Especially after he met Huang Yule. His desire to become even strong grew so that he could protect her forever. Hence, Li Moying cultivated with even more diligence, causing his soul detachment illness to act up even more frequently. Whereas now, the process of advancing into the ninth stage realm was the most crucial and most dangerous checkpoint. Liu Bian had once warned him that if he could not handle this crucial point prudently, then the result that awaited him was possibly the scattering of his soul. Of course, Li Moying would not possibly give up on charging toward the ninth stage realm just because of a mere warning, but he had thought of making more preparations before he advanced. He had not predicted that his own ability actually rose that quickly, and after absorbing the energy from the magical beasts in Violet Sun Valley, to immediately breaking through to 8th-stage realm, and later on borrowing the acting up of soul detachment illness to unleash 9th-stage realm peak's potential to kill the spiritual beast Qilin, obtaining the profound energy reward from the Qilin tablet. Under the push from various elements, he actually faced the moment of advancing in such a short period of time. Originally, he wanted to try ways to suppress the impulse of advancing, waiting to advance at another suitable time after they left Violet Sun Valley. But right after his body was heavily injured, he could no longer suppress the turbulent, profound energy in his body, and as the intensity of thunder-attributed energy was too high in Violet Sun Valley, he instantly sensed the drawing of his engine, wildly surging towards him and flowing into his meridians, forcing him to advance right now. The pain in his state of mind kept on accumulating and adding on to the confusion from his memories. It made Li Moying feel so sick that he wanted to throw up, feeling that he would go crazy at the very next moment. However, just as he was almost about to lose control of himself, there was a moment in time when Huang Yueli's face flashed past his mind. No, he could not admit defeat. He could not fall right here. He had not even married Lear, so how could he fall so easily? You can also listen on. Moreover speaking, the entire cloudy Qilin mystic region's electric current energy had all gathered at this place. So if he fails in advancement, his soul would be scattered and all these electric currents would immediately lose control completely. The person who would bore the brunt and be torn in a shred by the rampaging currents would be Huang Yueli, who was the nearest to this place. When Li Moying thought of this, he suddenly became frightened as his senses finally sobered up a little. He forcefully suppressed the dizziness in his head as he gathered all his energy to control the profound energy within him, preparing to break through the bottleneck of the 9th stage realm. Since things had come to such a pass, he no longer had a second choice and could only choose to advance immediately. The faster he completed the advancement, the lesser pain he had to endure and the safer Lear, who was at the boundary of the violent storm, would be. Finally, under his hard work, the electric current's energy slowly entered his body as the profound energy within him kept on contracting and concentrating as the changes to his body kept on speeding up. The surrounding thunder-attributed energy seemed as though it had reached the limit and was no longer rampaging, but slowly settled down as it struck a miraculous balance along with the speed of Li Moying absorbing the energy. Li Moying's advancement process finally passed the most dangerous point as it started to enter the stable period. God Realm, Cloudy Qilin Sect. Ever since Sage Wu Ding and Sage Dong had been obstructed by Yuda Zhuang, resulting in the lower realm genius's demise, they were totally unable to recover for a long period of time. Especially Sage Wu Ding. He had already closed his doors to visitors for more than half a month. It was until today, when Sage Dong visited him to play chess, did he give his old friend some face as he barely agreed to it. I say, Old man Wu Ding, stop being so melancholic. We Cloudy Qilin clan's history has been around for at least several hundred thousands of years, and within the long history, we had many god-grade geniuses. Although that lower realm genius's aptitude was really great, and it was indeed disappointing for him to have died. But since things had already happened, why do you still get yourself tangled over it for? Those who aren't clear on this would probably think that he was your son or disciple. Sage Dong held on to the chess piece as he shook his head and advised him. Sage Wu Ding gave him an angry stare. Look at what you're saying? As the Violet Sun Valley's Valley Master, all the practitioners who had passed through Violet Sun Valley's refinement are considered to be my disciples. Now that a genius has died in Violet Sun Valley, of course I don't feel good about it. Moreover speaking, do you know that even though we have a lot of god-grade geniuses in Cloudy Qilin clan, but there aren't many who could match up to that lower realm genius? All right, I know. He was indeed very talented, and anyway, I'm not even as incredible as him when I was young. But he's already gone, so, saying all these, Sage Dong was advising him when he suddenly saw Sage Wu Ding pat the table hard, as he stood up from his seat. What are you doing? Sage Dong frowned and raised his head up. Sage Wu Ding's expression was very colorful. It was mixed with terror, ecstasy, puzzlement, loss, and various other expressions as his eyes totally didn't fall upon Sage Dong. Instead, he was staring straight ahead as though he was possessed. Sage Dong frowned as he went up and patted him on the shoulder. I say, old man Wu Ding, are you all right? This old man was especially headstrong when he was young, so surely he wouldn't have taken a change for the worse after he got old, right? Just this small setback, and it had already caused him to go mad. Sage Wu Ding seemed as though he did not notice him as his eyes opened wide and mumbled to himself. How is this possible? How could such a matter have happened? This must be my illusion. It's simply inconceivable. You can also listen on. Hey, are you all right? Surely you haven't gone into chi deviation from yesterday's practicing of work skill, right? The more Sage Dong looked at him, the more he felt that something was wrong. Sage Wu Ding then suddenly recalled his senses as he heard what Sage Dong was saying and couldn't help but open his eyes wide and blew his mustache. What chi deviation? How could I possibly go into chi deviation? Old man Dong, something big has happened. What big matter has happened? I suddenly sensed that the lower realm genius in Violet Sun Valley had actually came back to life. Sage Dong went into a blank, thinking that he must have heard wrongly. What? Come back to life? Didn't you say it yourself that that genius had already died in Qilin Tablet? Have your senses gone awry? But that shouldn't be so. Haven't you said that Qilin Tablet's energy wasn't enough, and before he killed the spiritual beast Qilin, it's not possible for him to leave? If he really came back to life, doesn't that mean... Sage Dong really couldn't continue his words because the thought of that appearing in his mind was simply too shocking. Among the god-grade geniuses in Cloudy Qilin clan's long history, no one had been able to kill spiritual beast Qilin and to pass through the Qilin tablet refinement. But if that lower realm genius did it, didn't that mean that he was the first person among Cloudy Qilin clan's geniuses to have done so? This sort of thing was just too ridiculous because he was after all born in the lower realm. Under the scarcity of limited resources and cultivation methods, how could such a genius possibly appear? Was he still allowing others to survive? This absolutely could not possibly have happened. However, after Sage Wu Ding heard that, he shook his head. What does it mean? Meaning he killed the spiritual beast Qilin? The truth is just that. What? How could it be possible? I don't believe in such a matter. Your senses must have gone wrong. Sage Wu Ding bore a humiliated expression. Who am I? How could my senses possibly have gone wrong? I didn't believe it initially, but after that lower realm genius came back to life, the profound energy fluctuations in Violet Sun Valley turned volatile, and even the exterior array could have possibly cracked from it. No, not possibly. Heavens, Violet Sun Valley's barrier array had been shattered from the inside. Too scary, Sage Wu Ding sensed a new wave of profound energy fluctuation as his eyes popped out in surprise, just short of his jaw dropping onto the ground. If it wasn't something which he had sensed personally and believed that his senses wouldn't be wrong, then even he himself would not believe that such a matter had happened. Just where did this lower realm genius come from? Why was his innate talent so ridiculously strong to such an extent? Every single time he had assumed that this man was already genius enough, the other party always had ways to refresh his understanding, coming out with even more unbelievable stuff. Sage Dong was completely dazed. Shattered the barrier? I say, old man Wu Ding, now I'm absolutely certain that you've really gone into chi deviation. To come out with such hallucination, your illness really isn't light. If it was usual times, according to Sage Wu Ding's character, he would absolutely scold him back, as it was not possible for him to allow anyone else to suspect his own judgment. But right now, he actually couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. A genius practitioner of such standard had far surpassed his imagination. Even if they were the God Realm clan's core members, they had never met this kind of genius before. For Sage Dong to have such suspicions, it simply was absolutely normal matter. But things had not come to a conclusion yet, as Violet Sun Valley had once again emitted another set of news. You can also listen on. Following Violet Sun Valley's barrier being shattered, cloudy Chilan mystic region's heaven and earth profound chi was almost sucked dry. This kind of situation seemed to only have one kind of possibility, and that was someone was advancing in the cloudy Chilan mystic region. Furthermore, it was at least an advancement in a 9th stage realm. To the extent there was a possibility of advancing to 10th stage realm from the way the profound energy fluctuations were attracted. There was an age limit to entering Violet Sun Valley's refinement. Only those genius practitioners under 30 were able to obtain the qualification to enter. Generally, those under 30s who were able to advance into the 8th stage realm were already considered extremely outstanding in God Realm, and generally they were the top figures among the God-grade geniuses to do that. As for those who had advanced into the 9th stage realm before they turned 30, only those peerless geniuses from God Realm's large clans, throwing in an extensive amount of resources, would be able to manage that. This wasn't just merely a matter of God-grade innate talent, because cultivation was after all not only about exhausting resources, but also burning money. Without the clan's full support, no matter how genius that person was, it wasn't possible to advance that quickly. Although he wasn't sure how old that lower realm genius was. But no matter what, it wasn't possible that he had reached 30 years old, right? Just what stage realm was he advancing into? By now, Sage Dong had slowly accepted reality as he slowly regained his senses. In the end, upon one glance, he discovered that Sage Wu Ding's face seemed to have been struck by lightning as he was standing in a daze by the side. He hurriedly headed over and patted Sage Wu Ding. "What's the matter? What happened this time? Surely it couldn't be that your senses really made a mistake, or that lower realm genius died again." "Pooey, pooey, pooey, you crow beak." Sage Wu Ding regained his senses as he stared angrily at him. He recounted the situation which he had sensed earlier and described it to Sage Dong. Sage Dong simply could not believe such a matter was happening, but Sage Wu Ding's words seemed irrefutable, so he could only treat it as it was real. Once he had accepted this installation, it seemed that whatever shocking matter which the lower realm genius had done could be accepted logically. Sage Dong thought about it and said, "What you're saying isn't totally impossible. 10th stage realm is a little too ridiculous, but if that lower realm genius is just 27 or 8 years old, advancing into the 9th stage realm is very normal. Lower realm's resources might be a tad too little, but his innate talent is right there, so how could he possibly be compared on the same level as an ordinary Earth-grade genius?" AI, you don't know this. That intense, profound energy fluctuation had already broken Violet Sun Valley's barrier. In future, all Cloudy Chilan Clan's practitioners are not able to enter it anymore. This abnormal might, even if I asked myself honestly, when I was advancing into the 10th stage realm, it had never happened before. He might really be advancing into the 10th stage realm. A 30-year-old 10th stage realm. Sage Wu Ding shuddered as he gave himself a huge fright. "Sage Dong, was much more stable. How can you and me be compared to this kind of genius? Haven't you said it yourself? He's the first practitioner in the entire Cloudy Chelan clan's history to have passed the Chelan tablet's refinement successfully, so the reward which he obtained might be extremely astonishing, something which you and I could not imagine. Perhaps when he's advancing, he has obtained a huge amount of resources and with numerous profound energy as reward, matching with his own innate talent. This isn't something impossible. Sage Wu Ding blinked. It really seems so since you've put it in such a way, Sage Dong replied, right? My guess is logical and reasonable. It's because you're too anxious. Sage Wu Ding recollected his thoughts for a moment and finally nodded. Looks like what you said shouldn't be wrong. You can also listen on. Actually, Sage Dong's guess towards the actual scenario which had happened to Li Moying was especially close. Li Moying had indeed obtained a huge amount of profound energy replenishment after he killed the spiritual beast Chelan, hence obtaining the foundation of breaking through. But Sage Dong could never have guessed that Li Moying was already a 9th stage realm peak practitioner in his past life. His memories had been activated during the full moon's night under both activation of memories and provocation. He was able to succeed in advancing under coincidental opportunity. Furthermore, the most important thing was something which both sages would never have expected in their wildest dreams. Li Moying was merely 21 years old this year, much younger than what Sage Dong and Sage Wu Ding had expected. So it was foreseeable that based on his innate talent, breaking through to the 10th stage realm would not require a long wait of 10 years or so. Sage Dong continued, but for the clan to come out with such a genius, it indeed is worth celebrating. Moreover, we should also try to bring him back to the main branch of the clan as soon as possible so that we won't delay his future. We had better hurry over to meet the clan leader and tell him this good news. We can also give Yuta Zhuang a tight slap on his face at the same time. However, Wu Ding shook his head. Forget it, clan leader is really in closed-door cultivation. The last time I was in a hurry to save him, and under such a precarious situation, hence, I just went up directly to ask for a meeting. But now that lower realm genius had already gotten himself out of the crisis, so we need not be hasty this time around. Let's wait for clan leader to come out from his closed-door cultivation, then talk about it. Moreover speaking, he's still so young and had already successfully advanced to the 9th stage realm. There should be no problems for him to ascend successfully in future. There's still time for him to undergo some experience learning there, then nurturing him when he arrives at God Realm later on. Sage Dong nodded. What you said is right as well. But this is really a huge, joyous matter. I'd not expected that after so many years, among the disciples which we Cloudy Chelan clan had put in our best efforts to nurture the disciples in the clan master still hasn't picked any satisfactory candidate to be his successor. But in the end, such a genius is discovered from the lower realm. That's right. In future, when he returns to the clan, I wonder what kind of commotion will he raise. Sage Wu Ding thought about the intense fighting among the clan's different factions and couldn't help but go into deep thoughts. In Violet Sun Valley, Li Moying's advancement finally entered the ending stage. The frequency of thunder and lightning in the sky started to subside, and the surrounding rampaging thunder-attributed energy also started to become stable and peaceful. After Li Moying had finally completed his succession from failure, there was an evolution to his physical body's physique. Under the effect from Heaven and Amp, Earth Code, the wounds on his body started to heal slowly, and his freshly grown skin was supple and smooth, crystal clear like jade, and under the refraction from the electric currents, it seemed to give off a dim glow. Just taking one look at him, and one could distinctly feel that his perfectly good-looking sculpted body contained a terrifying, powerful energy as an unexcelled aura was emitted from his bones. After he shed his mortal body and underwent an exchange of bones, his meridians and dantian were much more tenacious and spacious than before, allowing him to accommodate up to 10 times the energy. Li Moying's body had been swept along by electric currents as he suspended in mid-air, while thunder-attributed energy seeped into his body, flowing along his meridians as it continued to revolve. Every single time his profound energy went one cycle, his meridians would be strengthened once again as the condensation of his profound energy in his body was raised to a new level. Over and over again, as it kept on repeating the cycle. This was an extremely slow process, and it varied among different people's innate talent, which might last between several hours to several days. You can also listen on. After Huang Yue saw Li Moying entering the stability stage, she heaved a long sigh of relief. Even though she wasn't aware of what price Li Moying had paid in his past life, she instinctively felt extremely worried. Advancement to each practitioner had a certain amount of risk to it. Moreover, Li Moying had continuously broken through 2 large realms within 10 over days, and there was a possibility of an unstable foundation. Luckily, everyone was still rather smooth. The process of Li Moying absorbing the energy lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. At last, the electric currents slowly dissipated and Li Moying steadily landed on the ground. His peach blossom eyes, which had been tightly shut, slowly opened, and an electric current flashed past his eyes as there was a deeper sense of reservation in his cold and penetrative eyes. Huang Yue cried out with joy and shock. You've advanced successfully. That's right, the profound energy fluctuations from you is indeed that of the 9th stage realm. Li Moying nodded as his gentle gaze fell onto her sweet-looking face. Lear, I've made you worried. I'm already in the 9th stage realm right now, and I can protect you properly. Huang Yue pouted. I can take care of myself. I don't need to rely on you. Although she said that, but she still ran swiftly into Li Moying's arms. Li Moying locked on to her waist tightly as he lowered his head and planted a kiss on her cheek, while laughing in adoration. You don't need me to protect you. I'm the one who wants to stick to you shamelessly. Huang Yue snorted and was just about to say something when she felt something nudging around her neck as she got a fright. She lowered her head to discover that a little qilin had snuck out from Li Moying's top around his chest. It seemed to have grown a little larger, and the scales on its body didn't seem to be that soft anymore, as it felt much tougher to the touch. Apparently, this little qilin had also advanced. But because Li Moying's aura was just too strong, hence he had covered its advancement fluctuations. This little thing was obviously not at ease as it kept moving around, as though it was trying to stop its master and his fiancée from Sacred Phoenix Race from getting intimate. Li Moying lowered his head several times, and whenever he wanted to kiss Huang Yue, this little thing kept interrupting them. Huang Yue's face turned green as she stared at little qilin and said, If you continue to make trouble, I'll cut you up into pieces and make barbecue meat out of you. Little qilin seemed as though understood what she was saying as it gave off a terrified cry. Li Moying couldn't help but bursted out laughing as he placed his hand on little qilin's back and kept it away. At the same time, he lowered his head towards Huang Yue and said, Why are you thinking about barbecued meat? Are you hungry? Let's grab time quickly and keep all the treasures in Violet Sun Valley, and then go and eat? Huang Yue blinked her large eyes as she asked puzzledly. Li Moying laughed, but a chilly murderous intent arose in the depths of his eyes. I'll bring you to have something first. Then, we still have a huge debt, which we should settle properly. These days, when his consciousness was blurry in the qilin tablet, the most images which appeared in his mind, other than the scene where Huang Yue self-exploded, was the scene where she was pushed down the cliff by Murong Fei. At that moment, his heart almost stopped, and that ultimate terrifying feeling still stayed at the depths of his heart until now. Murong Fei, Li Lingchuan, and Lung Yifeng. Looks like I've been too merciful for these few years to allow you guys to have the guts to think that you can provoke me. You can also listen on that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.